Well, hello everybody. My name is Kokto and the family name is Yip. All right, just to get that out of the way, I'm going to talk about meditation and relaxation, actually choosing the best. Now, I'm going to refer to a lot of scientific research on the brain to try to make the differentiation between how to choose what's the best. All right, I started life. Well, I was born in Malaysia. I'm Chinese. At 18, I went to London to study accounting. And at that time, it was 1968. That was a time of the flower people, the hippies, India, Eastern music, Ravi Shankar, sitars. The Beatles were doing meditation with Maharishi Guru, transcendental meditation, and the celebrities were all into it. And I picked up an English book, written in English, on Zen meditation and several other books, but they were all in English. And I am English educated, so it really suited me. So that's how I picked up Zen meditation, Japanese Buddhist meditation in London. So it really depends how it's packaged, right? So, and it suited me because I was an anxious person. I was in London, I was to study hard, I was to push and succeed. I'm an immigrant, child of immigrants from China. So, you know, Chinese, we are pushy, we want to succeed, we are scared of being left behind. So it suited me. So I was pushing hard, it was stressful, and I relied on meditation to strike that balance. But meditation was to serve my ambitions. And isn't that how these days meditation is used, right? To sell better, to perform better in the office and so forth. But anyway, that's my background. And I did it for 20 years until I was 38. And at 38, I became a Christian, all right? Now, Eastern meditation, Zen suited or could just flow into my Christianity. Now, let me try to explain it, right? So on the left is Dalai Lama. And his most famous quote, most loved quote is, what is love? Love is the absence of judgment, non-judgmental, all-inclusive, compassionate. And people loved it. And I loved it. And on the left, Eastern meditation, whatever happens in your mind, it's non-judgmental. It is what it is. There's no right, no wrong. It's bare attention and pure awareness. All right. But after I became Christian, after I was 38 years old, I began to read the Bible. And in Psalms 19, King David also did meditation, but it was biblical meditation. And in verse 12 and verse 13 of Psalms 19, this is what I read. And it shocked me, frankly. He was meditating, and in his words, who can understand his errors? Cleanse thou me from secret faults. Keep back thy servant also from presumptuous sins. Let them not have dominion over me. Then shall I be upright, and I shall be innocent from the great transgression. Now, you can sense from King David's meditation, he was looking for differentiation, the choice between right and wrong. And his search for what is right was so determined that he appealed to God. He said, I don't know my errors. I keep my errors, my faults, secret to myself. But you, Lord, you can tell me, you can reveal it to me because I need to know. And then he addressed his presumptuous sins. Now, we can always assume that we are right with God, but King David digged deep, presumptuous. Am I being presumptuous about myself? So he wanted to be upright, be innocent, and be innocent of great sin. So, sharp contrast. King David's meditation was the polar opposite of the Dalai Lama. Now, where in this spectrum of meditation, how do we understand and choose between these two polar opposites of meditation? Okay, that was my task when I discovered it. So I went to science And I looked up and I researched it. And I found Dr. Beauregard, Montreal University. And first of all, he wanted to know where in the brain, which part of the brain gets activated when one is in romantic love. Right? Now, they can look at the brain as it works now, functional MRI machines. So what he did was, he got people who are romantically linked, put one of them in a machine, show the one in the machine a picture of the one they love, and then look at which part of the brain fires. All right. What he found was, there's a part in the brain called the anterior cingulate cortex. Now, I'll refer to it as ACC for short, ACC. The ACC fires in romantic love, plus 2 other places. So 3 places always fire. Okay. Now, he got curious. What about unconditional love? Like, Christians, it's unconditional love of God. God loves you because he loves. And he wants to give you the unconditional love so that you can come to him and be transformed. Now, how he fashioned this experiment was he chose carers, genuine carers who cared for the sick, perhaps the destitute, the poor, and they can, or maybe near death, and they can never repay back. So it's unconditional love by the carer. So he puts the carer in the machine, shows them a picture of the one they cared for, and what fires in the brain? 7 places. The ACC and 6 other places. So 7 places just fires up in the brain. Now, when the brain fires up, it's good news. When the brain lights up like a Christmas tree, because people suffering from dementia, right? Alzheimer's, well, the brains are very quiet. But when you fire up the brain like a Christmas tree, it's your reward. So unconditional love, for which we are wired, brings an immediate reward. So my conclusion was, God made us each for the other. Unconditional love for the other. And so this was the good news. But there was more good news, right? Dr. Tim Jennings, he says, he's a board-certified psychiatrist, he says, a special part of the frontal cortex, called the anterior cingulate cortex, or ACC, is our neurological heart. And it is here we experience love, compassion, empathy, sympathy, altruism. And the ACC is also the seat of the will, your determination, the place we choose right from wrong. Now remember this, the crucial 3 things I think are love, the will, and choosing right from wrong. Now, as I reflect back to Dalai Lama, he said, well, it is what it is, right? Love, no judgment. So when the ACC fires, it's supposed to choose right from wrong. But Dalai Lama says, no. But King David, in his meditation, was completely different. He is meditating. Something in his brain tells him that he wants to choose between right and wrong. And not only to choose between right and wrong, but to have the will from God to be upright, to do the right thing. So we have, again, 2 personalities and 2 opposing types of meditation. Now, there were more researchers, Elizabeth Phelps, Wayne Drevers, and many more, who were looking at the ACC. Now, what they found was, when you are depressed, when your boss pushes you too hard, doesn't give you any sympathy, doesn't give you any help, week after week, you get depressed and anxious. Now, what causes anxiety in the brain is this part called the amygdala. Can you see it? Amygdala, where my cursor is, and it belongs to that little blob at the base of your brain. Now, what they found out was this, and this is the good news. When the ACC fires, the amygdala, which is responsible for depression and anxiety, it calms down. Your depression goes away. So what these researchers began to say is that the ACC is like a hardwired switch. It's so reliable that if you switch it on, you get hope and optimism, and your depression goes away. Now, big question is, how do we switch this thing on? Okay. Now, here is some graphic examples of how to demonstrate this. When it's like a seesaw, when the ACC, love, hope, and optimism, is high, where the ACC is driving, the amygdala is calm. So really, you want this state of mind, right? You hope, you've got hope and optimism, and you've got a calm amygdala. That's when you perform, right? Now, on the other hand, if the ACC, or the amygdala is active or overactive, that's when you get depressed. And your depression or your amygdala suppresses your ACC. That's when your hope and optimism disappears and you're depressed. All right? So this is what happens with the ACC and the amygdala. Now, if we know how to strengthen that ACC, we will have hope and optimism. When everybody is blue, you can be that smiley face. When you're stuck somewhere in the middle of nowhere, the first thought that will come to your mind is someone will come and get me. It's hope and optimism. Now, I'll tell you a story to illustrate this. Dr. Zander, he is, or probably was, the conductor of the Boston Philharmonic. Every year, he gets all the best musicians and vocalists from around the world, and he harmonizes them into the Boston Philharmonic. Now, he used to grade them, number one and number last. And he said, he observed them. As they were preparing to be graded, they were practicing. But they tended, because of the competition and fear of each other, they seemed to, they were practicing as if they were in a silo, in a prison, all on their own. But that's not real. What music is. Music is about harmony, working together, right? To bring music into the life of the listeners, to bring us to the heights of joy and the depths of sorrow together. Now, so one year, he said, and he wrote this book called The Art of Possibility, or Reaching Greater Possibility. So that year, he said to the musicians, I am not going to grade you. You can all assume you're getting an unconditional A. All you got to do is, after 6 months of the unconditional A, just tell me, what did the unconditional A do for your life? So you got a stack of letters, virtually all saying the same thing. Dear Dr. Zander, I didn't feel like an A. You told me I'm an A, insisted I'm an A. And now, when I practice my music, I do not do it on my own. I work in harmony with my colleagues. I learn new techniques. I can hear and I can feel the music. And Dr. Zander said that year, the Boston Philharmonic was the very best. Right. So it's all about anxiety and fear, suppressing the ACC, that hope and optimism, that love. But if that fear is released by unconditional A, in this case, liberation, creativity, harmony. Now, the further good news. What fires together, wires together. What fires in your brain becomes stronger. Now, if you should want to learn Chinese, for example, and start it, that part of your brain which recognizes language starts from being thin. And as you practice and practice and practice, it grows to be thick and strong. But if you should then let it go and get back to your original language, not Chinese, what was thick would become thin again. Right? So what wires together, fires together. So now you can begin to shape your brain. You can strengthen your ACC, or you can even strengthen your amygdala. Well, the people are police in New York, rough areas, military in the Middle East, because of the stress, their amygdala have grown bigger and are described as swollen. Yeah. So you can grow either one, or you can grow different parts of your brain, language, and so forth. Now, you need the ACC for discipline over diet, for example. Here is what Helen Wallace said. As for the anterior cingulate cortex, the study found that when this part of the brain functions normally, we learn quickly whether a decision we made matched our expectations. If we eat food that makes us sick, we do not eat again. But in people with malfunctioning ACC, these signals are missing. And so they continue to make poor choices. All right, so there you are. The ACC, the seat of the will, right choices and control. Right. So more for the ACC. So In health centers, right, lifestyle centers, which I'm part of in Malaysia, a place called Anand Healthcare. What we do is the first two pictures on the left. We teach them how to cook. We teach them vegetarian cooking. The doctors give health lectures about the body, about health, about maintenance, right? And then they go through 5 to 20 days of going through that lifestyle to repeat it in their lives so that it becomes a habit. So they eat the food, they have a great time, they exercise when they have never done it before, and it happens for 20 days. And hopefully at the end of 20 days, there's a habit that's formed, right? And then we maintain it. The last picture on the right is my wife and us at home. We bring these people who've been to the health center, we bring them home, we cook, we do cooking demos, and we eat together. So we support them in their journey. Now, knowledge change and maintenance is crucial, but the ACC is very much a part of it because it's about the will and choices, okay? And if you fail in maintenance, well, there goes your diet. Right, now, what I found about meditators or meditation was shocking. In this research, these people found that in meditation, during meditation, the ACC is deactivated. That part which is so crucial to our life is deactivated. Now you see that chart on the left. You see where my cursor is, that zero, that line 0. M stands for meditators in meditation. In meditation, that gray box is below 0. The ACC is deactivated. But in C, which is a control group, okay? My cursor is showing the C. They are not meditating, but and because they're not meditating, the ACC is activated. It's that gray box is above 0. So Eastern meditators, compared to controls, showed reduced activity in the ACC during meditation. Now that gave me a shock. So I asked myself for 20 years when I was doing Eastern meditation, what happened to my hope and optimism? Did I just get tranquility and peace? But did I miss out on hope and optimism? Now, so let's consider what Eastern meditation is, all right? On the left, Eastern practices are to reach silence, nothingness, non-judgment, bare awareness, or pure awareness, as they say, and oneness. Now, how did they offer to do this? Following one's breath. Right? Christians now call it breath prayers, right? But when I was doing Zen, it was following one's breath. I would sit cross-legged, relaxedly, counting my breath, following it in cycles of 10 and starting with 1 again. Now, breath is nothing. So when you focus on your breath and nothing else, it's nothing. Right? So you're emptying your mind. I was also taught this third thing called koan or riddle. Now, the koan that was offered commonly to Zen meditators is this. What is the sound of one hand clapping? Right? Nothing. So we have to dwell on it until our mind is empty. All right. So now if I were to ask you this, if I were to ask you to focus on a spot of light, a laser beam, a sharp spot of light, and focus on it, are you focused or not focused? You're focused on a little spot of light. And the point of it all is to get you to focus, to not focus on everything else, to the exclusion of everything else. A spot of light, virtually nothing, to the exclusion of everything else. So you're focused, yes, but you're not focused on everything else. So that's the point of Eastern meditation. And at the bottom, mantras, okay? That icon there is Om. That's a Sanskrit holy word. And that is a mantra, okay? Now, there is now hybridized meditation where Christians are bringing in the techniques of mantra, and they offer the word Maranatha as a mantra. Now, the experts say, the researchers say, you can choose Om or you can choose Maranatha. and repeat it, or you can choose Coca-Cola. It does the same thing to your brain in meditation, right? The same thing that Om does or Maranatha does, Coca-Cola does. So it's the repetition that does the trick. Now, so let's understand the brain. All right. Now, the first thing that happens as you're listening to me, your brain has a lot more fast wave beta waves. You're trying to figure me out. You're trying to drag out thoughts, recollections from previous notes that you may have made, and you're wondering if I'm telling you the truth, right? For example, that's fast wave. But before long, if you're doing a mantra or following your breath, what happens to your brain? You get more alpha waves. They are slower waves, waves that you get just before you fall off to sleep. And before you fall off to sleep, you know you are drifting. And so Brown's University, in researching this, they said, you know what alpha waves do for you? What mindfulness alpha waves do for you? It optimizes your inattention. So you're inattentive, you drift, you can't focus, right? So that's what it does. You use it, people use it to get away from stressful situations so that they don't have to focus on, they can be inattentive to their problems, right? They escape. Now, in deeper meditation, you get more waves, more theta waves, even slower. Those are the waves you get when you have fallen asleep. Okay, so it's tranquil, it's drifting, you are that kind of naturally, well, it's natural, these waves are natural, but you get more of it, but you are peaceful and tranquil. That's what's addictive, all right? Then the amygdala at the bottom left. The amygdala calms down. More tranquility. And dopamine, or at the bottom, 65% more dopamine from your own brain. Now, dopamine is a stuff of addiction. So you get addicted to not just tranquility of the brain waves, of the amygdala coming down, but you get addicted. And so you do more and more of it, and, well, you're a meditator. You got tranquility. But what is happening to your ACC or the rest of the brain? Now, let's find out. Right, now A, that chart there. That is when the ACC is driving the amygdala. The ACC is hope and optimism, right? Love, and the amygdala is calm. That's nice. You want that, don't you? Right? At the bottom is when B, right? B is when the amygdala is driving. And when the amygdala is active, depressed, your ACC, your hope and optimism is suppressed. Now, you don't want this. B, you really don't want that. Now, C is Eastern meditation. Now, we just learned that in Eastern meditation, the ACC is deactivated. So what happens? ACC deactivated. The rest, the natural sleep waves and amygdala and addiction, they are there. So you get tranquility. So that is the shape of Eastern meditation. So if you have to choose between C, which is Eastern meditation, and A, which one would you choose? Now that is a no-brainer. You want A. You want hope and optimism and have tranquility at the same time. You don't want to lose that hope, that love, that optimism, and have that seesaw look like this, right? All right, let's get more into it. So, Eastern meditation facilitates relaxation. That's what it does. It calms the amygdala, gives you sleep waves, it gets you addicted. And just because you use a Christian mantra to do it doesn't make it Christian. Okay? All right. Or if you use Om, doesn't make you Hindu. All right? Okay, now, more on Eastern meditation. The most common phrase relating to Eastern meditation is it takes your frontal cortex offline. Now, we all have a fully functional, healthy frontal lobe. Where the ACC is, right, it's in the front. Now, when you do meditation, when you're thinking of nothing, or you're actually starving your brain, you're Well, forcing it through a process to eliminate all other thoughts except or nothing. So you're starving your brain. You're taking it offline. It's a healthy frontal lobe, but it's like you're mobile. You're on a plane and you switch it offline and you're in airplane mode. Okay. Now, Andrew Newberg tells you how the brain works in meditation. He says, the results from this study might also suggest that meditation-based practices affect beliefs and experiences through a frontal parietal network. So the frontal cortex, when it's deactivated, also deactivates something called the parietal lobe. Now, what is the parietal lobe? The parietal lobe is the orientation area. It goes dramatically down in its activity during meditation practice. What's the orientation area? It is the area of your brain which tells you where you're in three-dimensional space. When your parietal goes down, you lose that sense of your complete wholeness, right? You are in space, you are part of space, you're part of everything, you're part of the sun and the moon, you're part of the flowers and the trees and the air, right? Because your parietal goes down. And you feel as if time has stood still, or there's no time. So this graphics is like, you are one with the universe. And that drop of water, that little icon, that's the icon of meditation. At one point, as you're meditating, you're that whole drop of water. But when your parietal goes down, it drops and joins with the rest of the water, and you lose your sense of self. And so Andrew Newberg continues to say, we think this is the part, the parietal, of what is associated with somebody losing that sense of self. They feel at one with God, at one with their spiritual mantra, whatever it is they are looking at. Now, it's a tremendous experience, but it's a neural phenomenon that seeks explanation. Okay, now, Newberg, Iversen, Travis, they have already said, sometimes meditation results in profound changes in consciousness, leading individuals into trance-type states, states of self-hypnosis or mystical states. So there's self-hypnosis involved. Now, when that parietal goes down, it's so an altered state of consciousness that you've never felt before. You're now looking for an explanation. Now, that's when hypnosis comes in, self-hypnosis, because you're doing it to yourself. Now, Columbia University explains self-hypnosis or hypnosis. There, in the front of your brain, two parts, right? There is the ACC, which is about the will. And there is the LFC, lateral frontal cortex, which is about reality. So the will and reality are working there to protect you. If one should go down, anyone should go down, you are open to suggestion, even if one goes down. So that's what they're saying. So now you're a meditator and you're deactivated your frontal lobe, taking it offline, the parietal goes down, you have this tremendous neural phenomena, you're looking for an answer. Now, if you should be meditating with a Buddhist, he will say, you have experienced being liberated like Buddha. If you're with a Hindu, you're in nirvana. Now you're doing Christian meditation, Eastern style. Your pastor may say to you, you're in the presence of God. But it's just a neural phenomenon. The reality is not there. So it's risky, right? It's dangerous. So when one drops into the so-called cosmic ocean, the East, pantheism calls it Advaita, Nirvana, Satori, that's Zen, oneness, and so forth and so forth. But in essence, what they're saying is, your experience is God is in, or all is God, sorry, right? Or you, including the flowers and the trees, the universe, all is God. That's how they bring the spiritualistic into the meditation. Or now on the left, if you're doing it with Christians, they are saying you're in the presence of God, the person. Now, this is true. This is dangerous to interpret a neural phenomena as with spiritual meaning. That may not be true. Now you've heard of mindfulness, right? Mindfulness has been deemed by the courts to be not religious. And that's why it's gone to hospitals, it's gone into therapy, it's gone into schools for children. Now, John Kabat, the founder of mindfulness, he was a student of Buddhist teachers such as Thich Nhat Hanh, Master Sung Sat. He ran something called the Cambridge Zen Center, and he practiced yoga. And then he integrated these practices with psychology, right? And he founded mindfulness. Now, is it religious? He did not use religious terms, but this is to be discovered. All right, now he is part of Mind Life Institute, where the chairman is Dalai Lama, and you can see John Kabat-Zinn right in the middle. He's described as a founding steward, and those names are PhDs, science. And so, like Mind Life Institute, Buddhism is using scientists to validate meditation, Eastern meditation, and they're pumping money into it. Now, if I were to tell you to try to use words to explain this oneness, and I were to attempt it, you would think I'm an idiot. Now, let's say I'm trying, okay? I'm teaching Eastern meditation. I'll say something like, you're all waves in the sea. All right, the 30 of us, you're all sea waves. But you're all sea water. And sea water is God. So you're all God. Now, you can't sense it because you've done meditation. Logically, listening to those words doesn't make any sense. But the experts are saying, right, here is what we read, that it's a neural phenomenon. It happens in your brain, and it is given that sense that altered reality is generated in your own brain. All right, meditators and behavioral scientists notice a deepening of their intellectual understanding of the statements of more advanced practitioners. In other words, gurus and meditators. Now, it does appear the intellectual understanding in this area demands an experiential basis, and that what was incomprehensible at one stage may subsequently become understandable once an individual experiences the meditative process, goes through the meditative process, and then you understand. So what was incomprehensible, what I was trying to explain to you, seawater, sea waves, being God. Now, if you do meditation, something happens in your brain and you understand it. So what happens in your brain is, well, you've got to decide whether it's dangerous or not. Now, Kabat-Zinn, for beginners, in 2006, he said this is for beginners. Now, I'm sure you will discover the mystical meaning in his English words. Right? He says, the goal. There's no place to go, nothing to attain. It's realizing you are already there. You're already here. So there's no place else to go. What happens now is what matters. The future we want is here now. We are already in it. In this, it is as if time is standing still. It is as if your parietal has gone down. This is mystical, neutral, non-religious message. It's a goal. It's expressed that way. So it's non-religious, but it's mystical. Now, Nicholas Van Damme and 14 other researchers, they are saying this. The potential benefits of mindfulness are being overshadowed by hyperbole and oversold for financial gain. Mindfulness, meditation, and training is now a 1.1 billion industry in the US alone. And now, this is old news, now it's much bigger. And in table 4, Dr. Britton, that lady on the left, is part of this 15 people with Nicholas Van Damme. She is looking at adverse effects, okay? And one adverse effect in the third line is a change in worldview. 48% of meditators experience that. So this change of worldview is probably that parietal going down, where you've experienced something dramatic and you're looking for an explanation, and they offer you that spiritualistic explanation. And there are others like delusional, irrational, 47%. So a journal interviewed Dr. Britton and asked her, so why aren't these things out in the open? And her answer was, mindfulness is a multi-billion-dollar industry. One of the teachers I interviewed for my research actually said, this is not good advertising. right? So it's follow the money trail. So in summary, Eastern meditation and mindfulness, there is an inductive process. The brain goes offline. The amygdala is calm. There are more sleep waves. Dopamine addiction. And that brings you, ushers in you into the mystical mind. And in the mystical mind, the ACC is deactivated. It in turn deactivates the parietal lobe. The frontal lobe goes offline. You're open to suggestion, whatever comes your way. So you are at risk. So what is biblical meditation? All right, we've got to unravel that. So I started by saying, well, the Dalai Lama on one hand is saying this, there's no judgment, but King David is saying another. So what is biblical meditation? What is the advantage? Now, I want to talk about the greatest battle ever fought. But first, the ACC, that will, that determination, that love is so important that the US Army wants to find out if they can train their soldiers to fight with the ACC and not fight with the amygdala, fear. Can you imagine if one fought a battle for the country out of love? There's every possibility of winning. Right, so the Calvary, the cross of Christ, is where Christ fought the battle for us. I'm going to characterize it as the ACC versus the amygdala. All right. So Christ grew up. Well, he started as a baby. He had a small ACC, but in his life, he nurtured people. He loved, he cared, he healed. And his ACC went from thin. What fires together, wires together, goes from thin to thick. And when they arrested him at the end of his ministry, they slapped him, they cursed him, they swore at him, they mocked him, they insulted him, traumatized him. But the ACC kept everything under control. Then they dragged him through judgment hall. One of his disciples denied him 3 times, and yet he stopped. In his condition, he stopped and looked at Peter with a look of love, pity, and sorrow. He engaged Peter. And then they brought him before Pilate. They insulted him more. And then they took the flesh off his back. They whipped him and took that, not just the skin off, but that flesh. And then they hung him up on the cross, and there was more mocking and shaming. And Satan sent a thief to insult him. And the thief provoked him, saying, if you are the Son of God, save yourself first. And that didn't work. His amygdala was kept calm by his ACC. And then last of all, they trusted to him a drink of vinegar or of fermented wine that was alcoholic. And if he had drunk that, the battle would have been lost. His mental powers would have been impaired. So Christ, because of a strong ACC, fought that battle and won it for us. Now, what is Eastern meditation? What is biblical meditation? It's by beholding. By beholding, we become changed. Now let's read. Christ was treated as we deserve, that we might be treated as he deserves. He was condemned for our sins, in which he had no share, that we might be justified by his righteousness, in which we had no share. He suffered the death which was ours, that we might receive the life which was his. So there at the cross was more than just forgiveness. There was an exchange. He took what we deserve, that he might give us in exchange what we deserve. We deserve to be condemned, number one. He offered us and gave us from Calvary justification and acceptance. For our sin, he gave us righteousness. For our death, he gave us life. He was crucified naked to make it more shameful. But in taking that shame, he upheld us that we may not be shamed. So in this great beloved exchange, we had the gift of life in him. Another inspired writer said, a thoughtful hour a day. It would be well for us to spend a thoughtful hour each day in contemplation of the life of Christ. We should take it point by point and let the imagination grasp each scene, especially the closing ones. As we thus dwell upon his great sacrifice for us, our confidence in him will be more constant, and our love will be quickened, and we shall be more deeply imbued with his spirit. If we would be saved at last, we must learn the lesson of penitence and humiliation at the foot of the cross. That is meditation. In Philippians 2:5, it says this, let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus. Now, is that possible? So in researching this, I was researching on what should we meditate on? And the Bible tells you on the work of God, on the law of God, on the statutes, and on the way of God. Now, these things are not to be meditated on it by emptying the mind. It's by filling the mind. And then I began to research, what then should we meditate on, and how is God perfect? And the answer came. What is perfect about God? Is the work of God, the law of God, the statutes of God, the way of God. The same things that we should meditate on is how God is perfect. You are asked to meditate on the perfection of God. So by beholding, we become changed. Let this mind, which is in Christ Jesus, also be in us. Now, you could find more information about all the subjects I've discussed in my website, meditation-mindyourbrain.com. So now we are open for Q&A. Thank you very much. Let me close this down.